The colony ship New Seoul buzzed with tension as news of the discovery spread through the corridors like wildfire. Commander Dong-hyun had tried to keep the information classified, but too many people had seen the data storage devices that Hyun-woo team had brought back. Within hours, everyone from engineers to farmers was talking about the ancient human ship and what it might mean. Dr. Janae worked in her genetics laboratory day and night, studying tissue samples that the ancient ship had analyzed. Her equipment was primitive compared to the technology they had discovered, but she could still see the genetic modifications that had been built into human DNA. The locks were incredibly sophisticated, designed to suppress not just memories but entire sections of the human genome. Strange things began happening throughout the ship. People reported vivid dreams of flying through space, commanding vast fleets, and walking on worlds that existed only in their subconscious minds. Children who had never shown any special abilities suddenly demonstrated reflexes and problem-solving skills that amazed their teachers. Mechanic Subin made the first breakthrough while trying to repair a malfunctioning power conduit. She had been struggling with the problem for hours when frustration made her slam her hand against the control panel. Instead of breaking it, the panel responded to her touch in ways it never had before. Systems that had been offline suddenly activated and power flowed through circuits that engineers had declared permanently damaged. When Subin tried to explain what had happened, she could not find the words. The connection between her hand and the machine had felt natural, like touching a part of her own body. She could sense the flow of electricity through the circuits and instinctively knew which connections needed to be made. The ship technology was responding to her as if it recognized something in her genetic code. Dr. Jinne realized that stress and strong emotions were triggering the breakdown of the genetic locks. People who had experienced life-threatening situations or intense physical challenges were showing signs of enhanced abilities. A construction worker named Kang Min had lifted a steel beam that should have required mechanical assistance. A navigator named Yoonji had plotted a course through an asteroid field using calculations that normally required computer assistance. The most dramatic awakening happened to a teenage boy named Jiwoo, who had always been considered slow and simple-minded by his teachers. He was helping Subin in the engine room when he accidentally touched one of the ancient data storage devices. The moment his skin made contact, his eyes rolled back and he began speaking in a voice that was not his own. Through Jiwoo, an ancient consciousness introduced itself as the collective memory of humanity's greatest leaders, scientists and warriors. They had been waiting in the hidden data banks for thousands of years for the day when humans would be ready to remember their true heritage. The consciousness explained that the genetic locks had been necessary to hide humanity from enemies who could track their mental signatures. The ancient voice through Jiwoo told them the real history of their species. Humans had not evolved on Earth but had originated in the galactic core, where they became the first species to develop technology that could manipulate space and time itself. They had spread throughout the galaxy not as conquerors but as gardeners, planting life on barren worlds and protecting younger species from cosmic threats. But their power had attracted the attention of older alien civilizations who saw humanity as a threat to their dominance. A coalition formed calling itself the Dominion, united by fear and jealousy of human potential. When they could not defeat humanity through direct warfare, they developed biological weapons that attacked the human mind, rather than the human body. The genetic locks were not just punishment, they were also protection. The modifications made humans appear primitive and harmless while hiding their true capabilities. The strongest and most advanced humans had fled to hidden dimensions, carrying with them the technology and knowledge needed to restore their species. When the time was right, Dr. Jinne discovered that the locks were beginning to fail on their own after thousands of years of genetic drift. Each generation carried slightly different modifications, and environmental factors were accelerating the breakdown. What had been designed to last forever was starting to crumble under the weight of time and natural selection. Commander Dong-hyun faced an impossible, decisive decision. The ancient consciousness warned that full awakening would be traumatic for many humans. The memories they would recover included not just knowledge and abilities, but also the trauma of the Great War, billions of deaths, and the pain of losing an entire galactic civilization. Some humans might not survive the psychological shock, but the choice was being made for them. Throughout the ship, People were experiencing spontaneous awakenings as their genetic locks failed. Medical officer Dr. Yoon reported that human brain activity was increasing dramatically in patients across all age groups. People were accessing memories and abilities that they had never possessed before. Subin learned to interface directly with ship systems using her bioelectric field. She could diagnose problems and implement repairs that would normally require teams of specialists working for days. The ship computer began responding to her commands, even when she was not physically touching the controls, as if she was part of its operating system. Young Jiwoo remained connected to the ancient consciousness, serving as a bridge between the past and present. Through him, they learned the locations of other hidden human artifacts scattered throughout the galaxy. Each site contained pieces of the puzzle that would allow humanity to reclaim their heritage. The consciousness revealed that the genetic locks had also suppressed human physical capabilities. Humans were naturally stronger, faster, and more resilient than any other known species. Their brains could process information at rates that exceeded most computer systems, and their nervous systems could interface directly with technology through bioelectric fields. But the most shocking revelation was that humans possessed natural abilities that other species considered impossible. They could perceive and manipulate quantum fields, sense electromagnetic patterns across vast distances and under extreme stress, could even affect probability itself. These abilities had been locked away so deeply that humans had forgotten they ever existed. Dr. Janae made the breakthrough that changed everything. She discovered how to safely remove the genetic locks using medical techniques described in the ancient database. The process was complex and dangerous, requiring precise modifications to brain chemistry and neural pathways. But it was possible to restore humans to their original capabilities. The first volunteers were Hyun-woo and his original exploration team. They had been exposed to the ancient ship longest, and their locks were already weakening. When the procedure was complete, they emerged as fundamentally different people. They retained their personalities and memories, but gained access to knowledge and abilities that had been hidden for millennia. Hyun-woo found that he could command ship systems with his thoughts alone, coordinate complex operations across multiple departments simultaneously, and access tactical knowledge that made him a master strategist. Nara discovered that she could analyze archaeological data at superhuman speeds and understand alien languages through pattern recognition that exceeded computer capabilities. The awakened humans realized they were not alone. The ancient consciousness revealed that automated systems throughout the galaxy were programmed to respond to awakened human genetic signatures. Hidden bases would activate dormant fleets, would emerge from folded space, and weapons that had been sleeping for thousands of years would return to life. But awakening also brought terrible knowledge. The Dominion was still active and still feared human potential. They had spent millennia ensuring that humanity would never remember their true nature. When they learned that the genetic locks were failing, they would stop at nothing to prevent human awakening, even if it meant destroying every human in the galaxy. Commander Dong Hyun made the decision that would define their future. Every human on New Seoul would be given the choice to undergo the awakening process or remain as they were. Those who chose awakening would gain incredible abilities, but would also carry the burden of remembering everything their species had lost. The process began immediately, and within days the colony ship was transformed. Humans who had been ordinary farmers, mechanics, and teachers became beings of incredible capability, working together with a coordination and efficiency that seemed almost supernatural. They were remembering who they had always been beneath the genetic locks, but their awakening had not gone unnoticed. Across the galaxy, Dominion monitoring stations detected the distinctive energy signatures of active human technology. For the first time in thousands of years, their ancient enemy was stirring, and the Dominion prepared to do whatever was necessary to put them back to sleep permanently. Captain Hyun-woo stepped off his landing ship onto the rocky surface of Kepler 442b and immediately knew something was wrong. The planet was supposed to be dead, but the air felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. His boots crunched, On strange crystalline sand that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the dying red star overhead, Dr. Nara walked beside him, carrying her scanning equipment and shaking her head at the readings. The metal detector was going crazy, pointing in all directions as if the entire planet was made of refined alloys. Young engineer Taemin followed behind them, his face pale as he stared at his atmospheric scanner. The air here should have been poison, but it was perfectly breathable almost, too clean. They had come to this forgotten world following ancient star charts found in a Dominion archive. The charts showed human settlements here, but that was impossible. According to official history, Earth had barely discovered fire when these settlements supposedly existed. Yet here they were, walking on a world that should not exist. The crash site appeared over a small hill, and Hyunwoo stopped walking altogether. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a city block, but it looked nothing like any human vessel he had ever seen. The hull was smooth and dark like polished black stone, but when Nara touched it, her hand sank slightly into the surface, as if the metal was somehow alive. Taemin ran his scanner over the hull and his eyes went wide. The readings showed technology so advanced that his instruments could barely detect it. The ship was not just intact. After what must have been thousands of years, it was still functioning on some level. Energy patterns flickered beneath the surface like a sleeping giant. They found an opening in the side of the ship that dilated like an iris when Hyunwoo approached. Inside, the corridors were wide and curved, following organic patterns that felt natural rather than constructed. Emergency. Lighting activated as they walked, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently. The control room took their breath away. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps and data streams in languages that shifted and changed as they watched. Nara touched one of the displays, and suddenly the alien symbols began rearranging themselves into Korean text. The ship was adapting to them, learning their language in real time. What they read changed everything. The star maps showed human colonies spread across thousands of worlds. The data logs recorded events from a civilization that spanned half the galaxy's cities, that floated in space fleets that could travel between dimensions, and weapons that could reshape planets. Taemin found the historical records, and his voice shook as he read them aloud. These humans were not primitive cave dwellers struggling to survive. They were gods among the stars, spreading life and knowledge wherever they went. Their technology was so advanced that other species worshipped them as divine beings. But something had gone wrong. The records became frantic, showing desperate battles against a coalition of alien species. The humans were not losing through lack of power, but through betrayal. Species they had helped and protected had turned against them, using weapons designed specifically to target human biology. Dr. Nara discovered the most shocking truth in the medical databases. Every human born after a certain date carried genetic modifications that locked away memories, abilities, and knowledge. Someone had deliberately crippled humanity, making them forget their true nature. The modifications were so sophisticated that they passed from parent to child for countless generations. A key ship showed them recordings of the final days, ancient humans fleeing in massive arc ships, carrying the last remnants of their civilization to hidden locations. They were not running from defeat, but executing a plan so desperate that it required them to sacrifice everything they were to preserve what they might become. Hyunwoo found the personal logs of the ship captain, a woman named Commander Soo Young. Her final entry explained the terrible choice they faced. The enemy could not be defeated through force, so humanity would hide in plain sight. The genetic locks would make future humans appear weak and primitive, while the real human fleet waited in hidden dimensions. As they explored deeper into the ship, systems began activating around them. Lights grew brighter, displays became clearer, and the ship started responding to their presence as if recognizing something in their genetic code. Taemin realized the ship was not just showing them information, it was preparing to share its secrets with them. The ship medical bay contained technology that could scan and modify living beings at the cellular level. When Nara allowed it to scan her, the results were astounding. Her DNA contained dormant sequences that matched the patterns in the ancient human database. She was a direct descendant of the star-spanning civilization. Taemin discovered that the ship engines could still function using power sources that their current science could not even detect. When he touched the control panels, they responded to his bioelectric field, creating a connection between his nervous system and the ship computer. The technology was designed for human neural patterns. The most disturbing discovery came in the ship intelligence files. The coalition that had attacked ancient humanity was still active and still in power. The Dominion that currently ruled this part of the galaxy was the same organization that had destroyed human civilization thousands of years ago. They found evidence that the Dominion had spent centuries covering up any trace of advanced human technology. Archaeological sites had been destroyed, records had been falsified, and any species that remembered the truth had been silenced. The official history of the galaxy was a lie designed to keep humanity weak and ignorant. As they prepared to leave the ancient ship with their incredible discoveries, Nara made one final observation. The other ruins on the planet were not ancient at all. They were recent Dominion bases built to monitor and study the crashed human vessel. The enemy had known about this ship for decades but had been unable to access its secrets. Yunwu realized they were not the first humans to find this place. Other teams had probably been here before, but something had happened to them. The Dominion had been guarding this secret carefully, and now 3 humans had stumbled onto the truth that could change everything. The ship computer offered them a final gift. Before they left, it downloaded copies of its entire database into portable storage devices small enough to hide, but containing the collected knowledge of the greatest human civilization in galactic history. The information was encrypted and would only open for humans with the correct genetic markers as their landing ship lifted off from the crystal sands of Kepler 442b. Hyunwoo looked back at the ancient vessel. They had come seeking archaeological curiosities, but they were returning with proof that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The question now was what to do with knowledge that could start a war or awaken something that had been sleeping for thousands of years. The journey back to the colony ship New Sol would take several days, and during that time they would have to decide whether to share their discovery with the world. They carried in their hands the power to transform humanity from a minor species struggling to survive into the rightful heirs of a galactic empire. But they also carried the knowledge that powerful enemies would do anything to keep that transformation from happening. The Dominion response came faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days of the first human awakenings, massive warships appeared at the edge of every human colony system. Their dark hulls blocked out starlight as they took positions around defenseless civilian settlements. The message was clear: surrender or face extinction. Ambassador Vex materialized as a hologram in the center of New Sol Command Center. His species looked almost human, but his skin had a metallic sheen and his eyes were solid. Black without pupils, he spoke in perfect Korean, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. The ultimatum was simple. Humanity would immediately surrender all ancient artifacts, cease any awakening procedures, and submit to Dominion oversight. Any resistance would result in the complete sterilization of human colonies throughout the galaxy. Vex gave them exactly 24 hours to comply. Commander Dong-hyun stood before the hologram, his newly awakened mind, processing tactical information at incredible speed. He could see the weakness in the Dominion formation, the gaps in their sensor coverage, and the outdated nature of their weapon systems. The enemy fleet was impressive, but it was also predictable. Dr. Ginny had been working frantically to understand why the Dominion was so terrified of human awakening. Her analysis of the genetic locks revealed something that changed everything. The modifications had not just hidden human abilities, they had also prevented humans from accessing technology that was specifically designed for their neural patterns. Subin made the first practical demonstration of this discovery. When Dominion soldiers attempted to board New Sol, they found that human technology no longer responded to their commands. Control panels that had worked for decades suddenly required human genetic signatures to function. Doors sealed themselves, and life support systems began filtering out alien biochemistry. The boarding parties found themselves trapped in corridors that reconfigured around them, as awakened humans used the ship systems like extensions of their own bodies. Elevators became impassable barriers. Ventilation shafts turned into maze, and gravity fields shifted to make movement impossible for non-human physiology. Young Jiwoo, still connected to the ancient consciousness, provided crucial intelligence through him. They learned that the Dominion had built their entire civilization on stolen human technology. They had reverse-engineered ancient human devices but had never understood the principles behind them. Without human slaves to operate the most advanced systems, their empire was fundamentally hollow. The awakened humans discovered that their physical capabilities extended far beyond what they had imagined. Kang Min, the construction worker, found that he could lift objects weighing several tons without mechanical assistance. Navigator Yunji could calculate hyperspace jumps in her head that normally required massive computer arrays. Dr. Yoon made medical discoveries that terrified the Dominion. Awakened humans healed from injuries at rates that seemed impossible. Their immune systems could adapt to new pathogens within hours, and their brain tissue could repair damage that would permanently disable other species. The genetic locks had not just hidden abilities, they had artificially limited human biology. But the most shocking discovery came from the ancient ship databases that Hyunwoo had brought back. The Dominion had not just conquered human civilization, they had systematically destroyed every trace of human achievement across the galaxy. Archaeological sites containing human artifacts had been bombed. From orbit, ancient human colonies had been sterilized, and any species that remembered the truth about human history had been eliminated. Nara found evidence that the galaxy official history was completely fabricated. The Dominion had spent thousands of years rewriting records, creating false archaeological evidence, and implanting false memories in entire civilizations. Every textbook, every museum, and every historical archive contained lies designed to keep humanity ignorant of their true heritage. The ancient consciousness revealed the ultimate truth about the Dominion. They were not a coalition of equals, but a hierarchy of enslaved species. The alien races that made up the Dominion had themselves been conquered by an older power that used them as tools to maintain control. The real rulers remained hidden, manipulating events from behind layers of puppet governments. This revelation explained why Dominion technology was so inconsistent. Some of their devices were incredibly advanced, while others seemed crude and inefficient. They were using a mixture of stolen human technology, reverse-engineered alien devices, and primitive systems they had developed themselves. The result was an empire that appeared powerful but was actually built on a foundation of fundamental misunderstanding. Commander Dong Hyun realized that the Dominion's greatest weakness was their dependence on human technology systems. When the genetic locks began failing, human colonies found that much of their supposedly alien equipment was actually ancient human technology that had been disguised and deliberately limited. The awakening humans could access functions and capabilities that the Dominion had never known existed. The tide of battle began to turn when Subin discovered how to reactivate dormant human systems throughout the galaxy. Using techniques learned from the ancient consciousness, she sent activation signals to hidden installations that had been waiting for thousands of years. Automated defense systems came online. Ancient shipyards began producing vessels and weapons that had been dormant since the Great War started responding to human commands. But the Dominion had one final weapon that they had been saving for exactly this situation. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving toward human space. The enemy was bringing their most powerful warships, devices that had been used to destroy the original human civilization. Jiwoo, serving as the voice of the ancient consciousness, warned that these ships carried weapons designed specifically to target human neural patterns. The same biological warfare that had originally forced humanity to hide was being prepared for use again. The Dominion intended to finish what they had started thousands of years ago. The awakened humans faced a terrible choice. They could surrender and return to slavery, hoping that the Dominion would be satisfied with victory, or they could fight, knowing that failure would mean the complete extinction of their species. The decision was made easier by the knowledge that the Dominion had never intended to honor any agreement they had spent millennia planning humanity. Complete destruction. Dr. Jinny made a discovery that gave them hope. The genetic locks had been mutating over thousands of years of inheritance. Each generation carried slightly different modifications, and the children of awakened humans were born with natural immunity to the biological weapons that had once defeated their ancestors. The Dominion's most powerful weapon was becoming useless. Su-Bin learned to interface with the hidden human installations scattered throughout the galaxy. Ancient factories began producing ships that made Dominion vessels look primitive. Automated defense systems created protective fields around human colonies and weapons that could manipulate space-time itself, prepared to defend their creators. The ancient consciousness revealed the locations of the greatest human secrets, massive fleets hidden in parallel dimensions, waiting for the day when humanity would be strong enough to reclaim their birthright. Entire armadas of ships that could travel faster than light, cross dimensional barriers, and reshape reality itself were preparing to return to normal space. But accessing these hidden fleets required more awakened humans than they currently had. The process of removing genetic locks was slow and dangerous, and many humans were not psychologically prepared for the trauma of remembering their species' tragic history. Commander Dong Hyun faced the challenge of preparing his people for a war they were not ready to fight. The Dominion made their final mistake by underestimating how quickly humans could adapt. When their advanced warships arrived at human colonies, they expected to find the same primitive settlements they had been monitoring for centuries. Instead, they found installations that their sensors could not properly analyze, defended by weapons that their tactical computers could not understand. The first major battle took place above the agricultural colony of New Busan, where 300 awakened humans faced a Dominion fleet of 50 warships. The humans had only a dozen ships, but they were crewed by people who could interface directly with their technology, coordinate their actions through bioelectric fields, and access tactical knowledge that had been accumulated over millions of years. When the battle ended, the Dominion fleet was destroyed without the loss of a single human life. The enemy ships had been captured intact, their crews taken prisoner, and their technology analyzed to reveal even more secrets about the false empire that had ruled the galaxy. For so long, news of the victory spread throughout human space, and awakening accelerated as people realized they were not helpless victims, but the descendants of gods. The genetic locks that had hidden their heritage for thousands of years were finally breaking down completely, and humanity was remembering who they really were. But the ancient consciousness warned that this was only the beginning. The Dominion was preparing to deploy weapons that could destroy entire star systems, and they were calling for assistance from powers that dwelt in the spaces between galaxies. The real war for humanity's future was about to begin, and the outcome would determine whether any life would sue. The awakening spread across human space like a chain reaction that could not be stopped. On every colony world, in every space station, and aboard every human ship, people were experiencing the return of abilities that had been locked away for thousands of years. What had begun as isolated incidents was becoming a species-wide transformation that terrified the Dominion farmer. Yoonji discovered her awakened abilities while working in the hydroponic gardens of the agricultural station, New Jeju-shi, had been struggling to diagnose a plant disease that was threatening their food supply, when frustration made her place both hands directly on the control console of the environmental system. Suddenly she could sense the flow of nutrients through every plant, feel the electromagnetic fields that regulated growth, and instinctively understand the complex interactions between organisms and technology. Within hours, Yoonji had not only cured the disease, but had optimized the entire agricultural system to produce yields that exceeded theoretical maximums. The plants were growing faster, stronger, and more nutritious than any previous harvest. Her direct interface with the environmental controls allowed her to fine-tune conditions at the molecular level. Similar awakenings were happening everywhere. Construction worker Kang Min found that he could shape metal with his bare hands, heating it with bioelectric fields, and molding it with precisely applied pressure that would have required industrial machinery. His colleagues watched in amazement as he repaired damaged hull plating by running his fingers over the surface, causing the metal to flow like liquid and reform into perfect structural integrity. Dr. Yoon made medical breakthroughs that revolutionized their understanding of human biology. Awakened humans could regenerate damaged tissue at incredible rates, fight off infections that would kill other species, and survive in environmental conditions that should have been lethal. Their bodies were adapting in real time to whatever challenges they faced. But the most significant discovery came from young Jiwoo, who remained connected to the ancient consciousness. Through him, they learned that the hidden human fleets were not just weapons but arcs containing the preserved knowledge of their entire civilization. The ships had been waiting in folded space for the day when enough humans would awaken to safely access their secrets. Commander Dong-hyun made the difficult decision to abandon the established colonies and search for these hidden fleets. Using coordinates provided by the ancient consciousness, human ships began jumping to locations that existed in parallel dimensions, spaces that could only be accessed by minds that understood the fundamental nature of reality itself. The first hidden installation they found was beyond anything they had imagined. A massive structure that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously containing ships that seemed to be made of crystallized light. The facility was larger than most moons but occupied the same space as a small asteroid. Through manipulation of folded space-time, Subin could barely comprehend the technology she encountered when she interfaced with the installation systems. The ancient humans had learned to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, creating ships that were not just vehicles but expressions of will made manifest. The vessels could change their physical properties, adapt to any environment, and travel through dimensions that other species could not even perceive. The hidden fleets contained more than just military technology. They were complete civilizations preserved in stasis, including medical facilities that could heal any injury, terraforming equipment that could transform dead worlds into gardens in a matter of days, and educational systems that could transfer knowledge directly into human minds. Dr. Jine discovered that the ancient humans had solved every problem that their descendants were facing. Disease, aging, resource scarcity, and even death itself had been conquered by technology that worked in harmony with awakened human biology. The genetic locks had not just hidden memories and abilities but had also prevented access to technologies that could make humanity truly immortal. But accessing this knowledge required more awakened humans than they currently had. The ancient systems would only activate for people who had undergone complete genetic unlock, and the process was becoming more dangerous as the Dominion deployed new weapons designed specifically to target awakening humans. The enemy had learned from their defeats and was adapting their tactics. Dominion ships now carried devices that could detect and disrupt the bioelectric fields that awakened humans used to interface with technology. Battle groups were accompanied by specialists who understood human capabilities and could counter them. The resistance faced a desperate situation. They needed time to awaken more of their people and access the hidden fleets. But the Dominion was moving faster than ever before. Enemy forces were systematically destroying human colonies before their populations could complete the awakening process. The turning point came when Jiwoo made contact with other ancient consciousness archives hidden throughout the galaxy. Each installation contained the preserved memories of different aspects of human civilization. Scientists, warriors, philosophers, and artists who had chosen to preserve their knowledge rather than die with their physical bodies. Through these multiple connections, Jiwoo became a living library of human achievement. He could access engineering knowledge, from master shipbuilders' tactical wisdom, from legendary commanders' medical expertise, from healers who had conquered death itself, and artistic inspiration from creators who had made beauty from the fundamental forces of the universe. The combined, ancient consciousnesses revealed the true scope of what humanity had lost and what they could regain. The original human civilization had not just been technologically advanced, but had achieved a level of integration between mind, matter, and energy that allowed them to reshape reality through focused intention. Subin learned to apply these principles to ship construction, creating vessels that responded to human thoughts as if they were extensions of the crew consciousness. The new ships could adapt their configuration in real time, growing new weapon systems when needed, changing their size to accommodate different missions, and even repairing themselves by restructuring damaged matter at the atomic level. But the ancient consciousnesses also carried warnings. The Dominion was not acting alone but was being controlled by entities from outside the galaxy. Powers that had driven intelligent life from countless other star systems were using local species as tools to eliminate potential threats before they could develop dangerous capabilities. These extragalactic entities had identified humanity as the greatest threat they had ever encountered. not because humans were naturally violent, but because awakened humans could potentially transcend the physical limitations that bound all other known species. The genetic locks had been as much about preventing human evolution as about hiding human memories. Dr. Jin discovered that the awakening process was accelerating beyond their control. Each human who underwent genetic unlock made it easier for others to awaken, creating a cascade effect that would eventually include their entire species. But this rapid awakening was also making humans visible to threats that had been content to work through Dominion proxies. The ancient consciousnesses revealed that humanity's original plan had not been just to hide until the danger passed, but to evolve beyond the reach of their enemies. The genetic locks had been designed to preserve human potential while forcing their development along specific paths that would eventually make them capable of transcending physical existence entirely. Commander Dong-hyun realized that they were not fighting just for survival, but for the right to complete an evolutionary process that had been interrupted thousands of years ago. The awakening was not returning humans to their previous state, but preparing them for something far greater. The hidden installations contained more than technology and knowledge. They held the keys to abilities that would allow humans to exist across multiple dimensions, simultaneously manipulate matter and energy through conscious intention and travel instantly between any points in space and time. But accessing these ultimate capabilities required perfect coordination between all awakened humans. The ancient consciousnesses could guide the process, but each individual had to voluntarily surrender their separate identity to become part of a greater collective intelligence that spanned the boundaries between life and death, matter and energy, space and time. Subin made the first successful connection to this higher level of existence while working on modifications to their most advanced ship. She found her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her physical body, interfacing not just with the ship technology, but with the fundamental forces that held the universe together. Through her expanded awareness, she could perceive the true nature of the threat they faced. The extragalactic entities were not just destroyers, but were themselves fleeing from something even more dangerous. Their destruction of other civilizations was not conquest, but a desperate attempt to prevent the emergence of species that might attract the attention of ultimate predators. The revelation changed everything. Humanity was not just fighting for their own survival, but for the survival of all life in their galaxy. The awakening process was preparing them not just to defeat the Dominion and their extragalactic masters, but to become guardians capable of protecting the universe itself from threats that existed beyond the choice that would define the future of humanity was placed before every awakened human across the galaxy through the expanded consciousness network that Jiwoo had established. Each person could feel the weight of the decision, not just for themselves, but for their entire species and all life in the universe. Commander Dong-hyun was the first to volunteer for the complete awakening process that would remove not just the genetic locks, but the barriers that separated individual consciousness. From the collective human experience, Dr. Jinny had developed the procedure using knowledge from the ancient archives, but warned that there was no way to predict what the person would become. The medical bay on New Seoul had been transformed using technology from the hidden installation's equipment that seemed to be made of living crystal, interfaced directly with human neural tissue, while energy fields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously worked to restructure the deepest levels of biological and quantum organization. As Dong-hyun entered the transformation chamber, his last coherent thought as an individual human was wonder at what he was about to become. The process began gently with warm fields of energy that seemed to dissolve the boundaries between his body and the surrounding space. His consciousness expanded slowly at first, then with increasing speed, until he could perceive not just his own thoughts, but the thoughts and experiences of every human who had ever lived. When he emerged from the chamber 6 hours later, Dong-hyun was no longer just a colony commander. He carried within his mind the memories of every human leader who had faced impossible choices, the wisdom of every strategic decision that had ever been made, and the collective experience of humanity's greatest victories and most devastating defeats. But the transformation had come with a price. The individual personality that had been Commander Dong-hyun still existed, but it was now one voice in a choir of millions. His personal desires, fears, and dreams were balanced against the needs and experiences of his entire species. He could still make individual decisions, but every choice was informed by the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. Dr. Jinne underwent the transformation next and emerged with access to not just medical knowledge, but the complete understanding of life itself. She could perceive the quantum interactions that created consciousness, the energy, patterns that defined individual identity, and the fundamental forces that connected all living beings across space and time. Through her expanded awareness, Jinne realized that the genetic locks had been more sophisticated than they had imagined. They had not just hidden human abilities, but had prevented humans from accessing dimensions of reality, where consciousness could exist independently of physical matter. The locks had been designed to keep humans trapped in normal space-time while their true nature existed across multiple realities simultaneously. Subin transformation was the most dramatic, because her mechanical aptitude became something far beyond normal engineering. When she interfaced with technology after her awakening, she did not just control machines but merged with them temporarily, becoming hybrid beings that were part human consciousness and part technological capability. Through Subin, the hidden installations began to reveal their ultimate secrets. Ships that could exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of creation, and defensive systems that could protect entire galaxies from extra-dimensional threats. The ancient humans had not just been advanced, they had transcended the normal limitations of physical existence. Young Ji-woo underwent the transformation while still connected to the ancient consciousness archives. The result was unprecedented. He became a living bridge between the past and present, carrying within his mind not just memories of ancient humans, but their actual consciousness patterns preserved in quantum structures that existed outside normal space-time. Through Ji-woo, the awakened humans learned the complete truth about their origins and destiny. Humanity had not evolved naturally on Earth but had been created by an even older civilization as a safeguard against threats that existed beyond the boundaries of the known universe. The genetic locks and hidden fleets were not just responses to the Dominion, but preparation for challenges that had not yet arrived. The ancient consciousness reveal